I know y'all heard about Ukraine and Russia. They at it right now. So we might be on a precursor of World War III. You know what I mean? Like all these different countries coming together in opposition, and it's just something to be aware of. It's always something going on, so it's hard to say if this is going to be something that big. I don't want it to get that big, but unfortunately, like I said, we don't necessarily have influence on what they choose to do. We could only focus on us, and so we're gonna get a little bit into that today. Like during times when things are going hectic, like what do we choose to do with our energy? What are we building? Okay. So, okay, maybe this is the crew right now today. All right, so today is February 24th, Thursday, and we will be reading pages 55 to 57 in Collective Courage. I do want to read a little bit of Jackson Rising just to kick us off. Yesterday, we talked about, women's contribution to two cooperatives, and as well as we talked about just the importance of us having our own in the midst of, or what happens when we start our own in the midst of opposition, right? So we're going to kind of continue that mode, but I want to open up with this. The roots of our assembly model are drawn from the spiritual. Oh, that was actually not the right page. Sorry about that. That was what I read yesterday. Here we go. Solidarity economy as a concept describes a process of promoting economics that promote social solidarity, mutual reciprocity, and generosity, right? So that's important to note. But we also want to note that, let me get back to that page. Okay, here we go. From police violence to the divestment of jobs and public resources, there are many challenges facing our communities that require us to leverage every available means of power to save lives and improve conditions, right? So that last part of, every available means of power to save lives and improve conditions, every available means, right? So that makes me think of Malcolm X, any means necessary. And it also just reminds me of when humans are faced with the very worst, we tend to be more creative, more intuitive. We tap into our inner resources, and we tap in and we look for our resources. Like we really look to see what tools we have, and try to solve our issues. I tend to have an optimistic view of humanity in the sense that we will figure out we will deal with our dark sides, in a progressive way overall. And there's always dips, just like the market. It goes down, it goes up, but I feel like humanity is on an upward trend. I look in the faces of the people around me, and that's where I get that hope from. I don't get that from the TV. I don't get that from mainstream media. So we will be talking about some a dark part of history, but I keep that in mind when I listen to these things. So on page 55, oh, did someone say something? Oh, okay. Peace to Natalie. Peace to Brother Tut. How y'all doing? Um, Glad to see my folks. Are you feeling good today? Okay. Give thanks to Shayara. She said, yes, I want to encourage everyone to have at least a month of food storage. Um, hmm Yes. Now is the time to think about those things, and for multiple reasons. War, the world. Tonga just had that volcano go off, and yeah, that's of course on an island away from us. seems kind of removed, right? But at the end of the day, we still felt those waves that came over when that happened. Um, we felt the waves of Japan when they had their incident. So we are still a part of this world. You know what I'm saying? And uh, we don't know what's to come. Yes, so it's a good thing to prepare, to at least think about what's next for your family in those times. And so on page 55, let's go down to the bottom. So this is we're talking about the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union, right? Um, I'll read the first sentence and then I'll go down to the bottom. As earlier populist organizations disbanded and went underground, the CFN-ACU began to pull together grassroots effort and form a network of regional and national organizations. So that movement of farmers who wanted to get more humanity and more, um, means to feed themselves, uh, came together and stayed consistent, even though different waves happened where it was some push and then pull back. uh, they continued, and the CFNACU was formed kind of like as a culmination of that energy. So if we scroll down, in any case, this is like the last sentence, one of the last sentences at the bottom. In any case, the CFN-ACU was indisputably the largest African American organization of its time. While its local leaders were black, the state and regional organizers were largely white. Headed by the white founder, Reverend Humphrey, who was general superintendent, whites are able to organize openly in spaces where blacks will be physically attacked. So that was the state of the world. You have farmers who started to understand that they had common interest and started working together, but recognized that they had to do so in a way that was, under wraps and not as public. So they allowed their white counterparts to enter leadership, and um, to be the face of the organization, while the blacks had to be more covert. And that's I would imagine a very complicated situation. Like in any organization, you want the best to rise to the top, and so in terms of like leadership, it seems like leadership was more so picked on fear and like strategy rather than who would be the best to represent. Um, and so I can see how that could just either make feelings arise or make operations kind of difficult, because if you don't respect the leader, then how do you continue? But they did find some success in avoiding conflict, which was important because lives were at stake. So I understand their reason for doing that. So let's continue. If we go down, the CFN-ACU was a self-help organization that encouraged members to work hard and sacrifice to uplift themselves. Some state chapters raised money to keep black public schools open for longer terms, founded academies, and solicited funds to help sick and disabled. So, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, this organization, which was black and white, was doing good in the communities, focusing on black communities, and it sounded like they were having some success. So let's keep going down to the second paragraph on page 56. While some black members owned small farms, many were sharecroppers and field hands on white plantations. The CFN-ACU urged members to improve their farming methods and learn new techniques, purchase their own land, and improve their education. It promoted collectivizing resources. All right, I mean that's profound. So they were saying like, look, we understand that you're in this position here, but let's give you the knowledge so you can get here. And that's profound on many levels, because I could imagine that boosts someone's like confidence in themselves, but also increases their ability to put food on the table. And if you're providing for multiple mouths, it's like, yo, how do I level up in this world that wants to see me stagnant? And so to have an organization that would allow you to do that through a limited means of you know, working the land, like, you know, at that end, if you're working the land, I could imagine like that's probably one of the few areas that you can win if you're a certain color or certain education at that time. So, um, and it's one of those things where a lot of people were working in what was a peonage, right? We talked about peonage yesterday, and just how you can work for somebody under a certain pretense that you owe them money, and so then they feel entitled to treat you however, and give you, you know, less resources, and, you know, create a long-term servitude situation. While that wasn't the motivation of the CFN ACU, it was okay. How do we get you to own, you know, and not just be a worker? Um, so that's big. So while some black members, well, we're on the second paragraph on 56. Um, Before being violently suppressed, the Colored Farmers Alliance advocated the expansion of land ownership and the creation of cooperative design stores designed to pool African American resources while boycotting stores owned by planters and allied merchants and commissaries. Um, so this was important because we start seeing the before being violently suppressed, right? That was a key part, because at the end of the day, I, I can imagine their progress probably started to show itself, right? Like, oh snap, like where are these black owners coming from? How you get land? And, you know, there are folks that were probably feeling jealous. Like, hold up, like, you know, there was a time when, as slaves were coming out of slavery, you know, they had all of this skill and know how to work the land. So it did create like a sort of competition with those who were already working in the land for like getting paid a certain level, and then uh, those who are now free have the skills, and really they'll take less pay, you know what I'm saying? So you know, hence unions being formed, and that being like opposition to organizations like CFN ACU, that were not necessarily trying to integrate and create opportunities for farmers in general. It was just, we the white farmers and we want to level up anybody black coming out of slavery. We don't want y'all over here because y'all are a competition to us that we don't want to respect or give any opportunity to grow. So that's the pretense for this next part that we're about to go into. So page 57, the LaFleur massacre. Now we all are familiar with. Well, I don't want to make an assumption, but I'm sure you might have heard of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. That was a very profound time, and I just want to read a little bit of, that I found online about the LaFleur massacre. One second. So I have learned, this is written by someone who did some, Henry Louis Gates Jr. So this brother actually did a lot of work finding the heritage of like a few famous people. He had a show on PBS. So this is him writing about the LaFleur massacre. I have learned that my great-grandfather Peyton Locke and his eldest son Ben Locke were both killed in Mississippi in the LaFleur County massacre, the September 1889 massacre in which dozens of black people were killed for organizing a colored farmers alliance. Was not a part of my family lore. In fact, I only learned of the massacre in 2013 by accident while searching for answers about my ancestors. Um, so yeah, this article goes pretty deep, but I thought that was interesting because this is not a um, commonly known massacre. Page 57. The troubles in LaFleur County sprang largely from the attempts by blacks to improve themselves financially. In LaFleur County, the Miss in LaFleur County, Mississippi, the CFN ACU shared an exchange with the White Southern Alliance. One Oliver Cromwell began organizing chapters of the CFN ACU in LaFleur in 1889. Holmes credits Cromwell with persuading blacks to stop trading with local merchants and use the Farmers Alliance cooperative store in the nearby town of Durant. White LaFleur County merchants were losing black business and debt and began to try to undermine Cromwell and the CFN-ACU. They defamed Cromwell, threatened him, and started rumors that he had embezzled CFN-ACU funds. The CFN-ACU men rallied to defend him. The white citizens were fearful of a rebellion and requested that the government send troops to defend them. So they got the governor involved. I mean, that's elevated beyond like a normal, just we beefing across my farmland against your farmland. No, this is statewide. While the rest of the account is confused and contradictory, the governor did send 3 companies of troops and local armed whites patrolled the county. It appears the local militias or posses massacred at least 25 blacks. Accounts, including black newspaper accounts, report as many as 100 African Americans murdered. While CFN ACU men rallied, most accounts agreed that they had little ammunition. No whites were killed. The incident was not actually well publicized at the time. Neither state nor county officials took any action in response to the mass killings. The killings in LaFleur County illustrate a condition then widespread in the South. Yeah, I get sad thinking about that because that was, I'm sure, very hard for the families of those brothers that died. 25 to 100. I mean, that's one was too many, but the fact that there's not even a clear number is even scary, right? Like how do you not know how many people died? Like, what happened to the bodies? So and this is all from folks saying, hey, we deserve a certain standard of pay. We deserve to be able to shop with whoever we want to shop with, sell to whoever we want to sell to, and not be blocked out of industry because of our skin color. You know what I'm saying? What are you guys' thoughts on the LaFleur massacre so far? Peace to y'all, all the folks that came in recently. Peace, Xavier. How you doing, Nathaniel? What's happening? Z, what's
Hola.
good?
It's Xavier though.
I'm sorry. Xavier. Raquel said, building black-led co-op stores and at the same time boycotting plantations. Hold on, Z, can you mute yourself real quick?
Yeah, my bad.
Building black-led co-op stores and at the same time boycotting plantation products, invest and divest. Profound. Natalie said, build and resist. Yes. And unfortunately, building and resisting does come with consequences to be aware of. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it was because of lack of resources or lack of foresight, why they weren't more armed. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they knew that they had to have white people in the front in order to quell the violence, I mean, that they had to know that violence was always in the midst, right? So just strategically, like, I would imagine you would want to be armed up to some degree. But again, if you're poor, you probably don't have the means to do so. So this is not I'm not criticizing them not knowing that, but it's just like understanding that from the foresight of 2020 or 2022. I just feel like, yeah, it's understandable that folks wouldn't have the artillery, but I would imagine that some folks knew, like, hey, we got to be armed up. And then also recognize that it was the blacks that got killed. It wasn't any whites that were even on opposition of the ones doing the massacring that got killed. So that's even kind of more uneasy. Like, yeah, I don't like you, but I'm not gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot the guy behind you. I'm gonna shoot them. Like, I know y'all all together, but it's really him I don't like. For very superficial reasons.
And somebody said it in the chat. Monica Jackson said, it's unfortunate what our ancestors went through to fight for our rights. Are we benefiting from what they fought for today?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd like to ask that to the whole group. Do we feel like we are benefiting from what they fought for today?
I think in a way we are, but in a way we still going through it in a different way.
I guess what I'm curious about is like once the system of dominance realizes that it's losing even an inkling of power, it's really throws like the brutality of its system onto whoever's trying to challenge it. And so what lessons is there to be drawn when you see folks trying to do for themselves, and then the minute white folks of the dominant system loses a bit of their stronghold, they just massively just brutalize. So can we build a movement that, I mean, how do you build a movement that gains enough power, either that they're not noticing, or then you just have a completely militarized strategy like the Black Panther? I mean, so what is the lesson we're learning from all these times that there's been just white terrorism on folks just trying to work on liberation?
Right. Like, how do we actually put these lessons into action? Um, I mean, I always like to look at the Black Panthers. I feel like they did a lot of things right. Um, and unfortunately, because of that, they were subject to a lot of, you know,
Abuse.
abuse. Folks, agents coming in to make things, more difficult, and government oppression, government opposition, I should say. That the government was very clear, like we don't want a black messiah to rise out of the ashes. I'm paraphrasing, but that was a term that they used, and yeah, it's very interesting that when we look at our origins as a country, we have these men who are against oppression, right? And saying things like, if the government isn't satisfactory to the people, then the people have the right to to overthrow that government. But the government doesn't want to be overthrown. The government does not want to lose their power. So it is easier said than done. So you don't even have to have the mind of overthrowing the government, but if you are changing the status quo, which threatens the government, you could still be a victim. So yes, it is a very like fine line. Like, how do you progress, but also understand that you have these un unwritten rules that are written, or that are circulated amongst the powerful and acted upon on the poor. We have, I think it goes into mental health, because black folk mentally already been going through it, but when white folk get their comfortability taken away, they go crazy. Yes.
And I think here you also have like an economic structure that's using the government to retaliate, because they call it on the governor. So using the government as a tool of oppression, not even the government being the own authority or decision making. They were a tool of an economic system that wanted to maintain itself in place when they saw that they were divesting or shifts in their economic power base.
That's scary, right? Because the
Yeah.
government is supposed to be for you, but now you have the government like attack dogs being sicked on you, you know. Mm-hmm.
Haven't they always done?
Right. Still happening now.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
that's
think
true.
we need to like lead by our ancestors. They the way they were, because it's kind of like after they did what they did, we just kind of been at a standstill, and we just been laying down and accepting what they've been throwing at us. And I think if we just rebelled a little bit how they did, which we haven't been, they wouldn't have no choice but to at least meet us halfway. Like it took a couple of Oriental people to get attacked for them to make a whole law and start protecting them. We've been getting for years attacked, and they have done nothing to protect us. There's no law for us. There's nothing. You don't got police officers, extra hours dedicated and money dedicated for them to protect us.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
even
and
on the
go ahead,
sorry.
Natalie. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
even on the gender base, like when you saw police brutality and folks complain about the police, it's like you're anti-police. When folks saw a sexual discrimination on the workplace, they were taking one person and firing them. So it wasn't like we were complaining about all men. So there's just like this slant around race in this country that just cannot see straight.
Mm-hmm. Shayara said a lot of black leaders are not standing up for us. They're getting paid to be quiet. Thank you for that. One criticism I had, because I had the same, um, Xavier, I had the same criticism of that law that came through, protecting Asian folks. Like, okay, I mean, I'm against Asian hate, but we never had a law that was specifically saying I'm against black hate. That seemed to stick, or that seemed to be pure in that essence, right? We have different laws that have been passed that some attribute to be for us, like what's the term, when they hire people, affirmative action, or of course, civil rights was something that was, the civil rights movement was inspired by blacks, like Martin Luther King, and the black churches had a lot to do with that. But it got expanded to all minorities, which is a beautiful thing. But when you just think about that, like, whose fault is it? The criticism I have received from posing my question, like, or my disappointment was, is that the government's fault? Is that Asian people's fault, or is that our fault? And I had to think about that for a minute, because like you said, Shayar, we do have to hold our black leaders accountable. But do we, as people outside of politics, really take politics seriously enough to step to it with a clear voice and a unified voice? Because it seems like that is part of the movement, is like, okay, these other groups, the LGBTQ, the Asian rights activists, they get real organized, and we see, like, even Jewish rights, or Jewish activists. You see people lose their jobs for even mentioning things that on the edge of disrespectful. Let alone, of course, if you say something disrespectful, your job is done. But if you say something even that they just don't like, not even necessarily disrespectful, you're getting checked. And I feel like to some degree we have an effect on culture, to where you can, it's like, okay, I feel like we allow ourselves to be used as attack dogs, right? Like how the government gets called on, like how the Joe Rogan situation, they tried to use that so for us to be against Joe Rogan. I do feel like he was wrong for what he said, but it's like, I'm not gonna just join in, because folks are really mad at him for being a voice of progression in general. I feel like folks were really trying to attack him and use black people to be mad. Like, look, he said the N word, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's a lot. It's a lot of other things for me to focus on. I'm not worried about Joe Rogan. I'm worried about police cracking my head open. I'm worried about schools closing. I'm worried about these different things. Like, I feel like, we have to be organized. So we cannot always point our attention at these other groups and be like, look at what they're doing, and look at what they got. It's like, yeah, they got what they got because they came together. We should be pushing ourselves to pull ourselves together a little bit harder. You know what I'm saying? Shayara said everyone benefiting from civil rights. Yes, everyone is benefiting from civil rights. I think that was an amazing movement, but we still get left behind. And I don't want to say we own all of that responsibility, but the part that we do, I feel like we don't fully hold. We kind of let it slip through our fingers and get distracted by social media, by consumerism, by what have you, and that's not the case for everybody. Everybody here is looking to better themselves and to be more liberated in the mind. I feel like, it's just a lot of poverty is distracting. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just talk about that. Like, if you don't have enough to eat, you don't have a place to live, you might not even be worried about politics, even though politics is affecting your life directly, which is the irony of it. So it's a hard thing. It just made me think of the balance of it. Like, I don't want to be mad at another group. I want to focus my attention on what I can control in my circle of influence, um, and I try to hold us a little more accountable. Is my lean to it. Um, and so let me see where else. Yeah, so we're pretty much wrapped up today, guys. I encourage you guys to look up a little bit more about the LaFleur massacre. There's different massacres that have happened along the same lines, like Rosewood, and there's probably a few other ones that I don't know about. So this was a common occurrence, and it makes me very sad. Sometimes I don't even like reading about this stuff because it's like, man, like we're reading about it almost like it's so just easy, like we're talking about a show or something. You know what I'm saying? But these are real people that really died, who were just trying to live and just trying to elevate their life, not trying to cause trouble. Um, and so we just got to recognize that, yeah, we are benefiting from what folks have sacrificed, but we have so much far to go. So please just remember to love each other, to continue to speak truth to power. If anybody doesn't have anything else to say, I'll see you guys later. Same black channel, same black time. All right, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Peace and love.
Thank you.